Hello, everyone. Welcome to the final discussion of The Great Ordeal. This is the third book of the Aspect Emperor series, or the sixth book in the Second Apocalypse series by R. Scott Bakker. We usually read this book or this series rather, about 100 pages every week. We are going to be continuing on with the Unholy Consult next week. Today, like I said, is the last 4 chapters of The Great Ordeal. And for next week, we're going to be talking chapters 1 through 6 of The Unholy Consult. With me, of course, the usual group of friends. Dan, would you like to start us off with introductions?
Yeah, I'm Dan, multiple time reader of the series, and as I say every time, I'm very excited to talk about it for the first time.
Nice.
Carl?
Yeah, I'm Carl. First time reader of the series, having a great time. My jaw dropped several times in these few chapters, so I am very eager to discuss them. And Steve Swatha.
I'm going to write that name till the wheels fall off.
You should.
I am Steve, and this is my second time reading this series, and I am catching so many things I missed on the first read. It's a little wild, and I catch so much from all of you that I completely miss because I'm not very smart. So I appreciate all of you. And for everyone who talks about how much they love Carl's insights, I have to plug his book because he won't. Go read Truth of Crowns. The
You were
link's in
nice.
the description. It's a great book. Go read it and enjoy it. It's tragic and violent, and the characters that you grow to love will be tortured and
Some of them will do
suffer.
torturous things.
Yes.
Yeah. That said, holy shit, I came to love The Survivor. Talking about characters you loved. Like in this one chapter, I mean, I was already very intrigued by him, but like I got really attached to him and was really sad when he jumped off a cliff.
I mean, he was kind of a monster, I guess, in a sense, because of his culture. You
Yeah,
know,
but like I mean, I guess he could have done like has he done anything really terrible?
well, I'm pretty sure he partook in like all the stuff that Vidunian did, such as killing children that they deemed perfect, or stringing their brains and facial muscles to train other people,
Right.
or all the whole things with a whale mothers. I'm pretty sure he's complicit in those things. I don't know how much, but
That's fair. I mean, I think on one hand, he's pretty young, is my
yeah,
understanding. I mean, clearly I think a thing we learned in this chapter for the first time was the kid is his kid, right?
yes.
And so that means that he partook in the whale mothers, which of course is an atrocity. But I mean, it seemed like he was receptive to the outside world in a way that Kellis didn't seem like, although it
Mm.
also at the same time seemed to destroy him. I mean, he still, I guess, pursued the absolute, but just found the absolute to be something different than what a lot of his Dunyan brothers believed it to be. This was an interesting chapter because, like, in some sense, not a lot happened, but internally for him, everything happened. I mean, it was a whole. I think he had begun to change before, but like this was a whole character arc in a chapter, and it like worked for me too.
So I have a question for all three of you, really, but specifically for the first time readers. If he survived all these things, he was able to hide in the dark, to battle to survive the battles, to for so long. What are your thoughts on him jumping and killing himself? What
Varsha,
yeah, what are your thoughts?
Varsha, I'm going to tag you in first, since I already gave some thoughts.
I don't know, that bit was kind of baffling to me. As in, I'm not sure story wise where that is going. Like, I guess for the character, I suppose it kind of makes sense. Kind of like I'm still trying to understand that, but the logic, I guess, follows. Mimara said, "Here, you want to join the absolute?" And he's like, "Yeah, cool. Let me jump off that cliff, right?" But the for the story, like, what's gonna happen? Like, what purpose is that serving? Is he going to come back in some form, or is he going to do a Kellis and go to the outside and come back? What? Yeah, I don't know.
He's just a guy. He's
Yeah,
not a
I feel like
sorcerer.
this
I
is
mean,
the end of his story. My one question was why, like, presumably the moral framework of this series, by my understanding, works off of not entirely, but very similar to kind of a lot of the like particularly Old Testament, but like, certain traditional like biblical values. And suicide is a big no-no. And
Hmm.
so I am curious why he thinks that's not going to end with him going to hell, especially since he already, like when Mimara looked at him with the judging eye, didn't look great. Like I don't know that he necessarily earned his place in presumably Oblivion was, what he was going for. That's the absolute, which I do feel to some degree makes the most sense philosophically as the absolute, as the Dunyan kind of talk about it. That was the thing I really liked about this thematically, was I felt like his conclusion was the conclusion that to me personally, as an individual, makes the most sense for the absolute as the Dunyan see it, rather than this like living conscious state of mind that they seem to believe they can reach, and I'm not sure is possible for a mortal or a human being. But beyond that, yeah, my big question is like, why does he think that this is gonna work? Like, to my mind, he just damned himself.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure. This whole chapter is kind of hard to follow exactly what he's thinking.
Right.
And I thought I had a very tenuous grasp of what he was trying to say when I read it last week, but now it's all gone. But I don't know. Like the impression to me was somewhat that like his brain like kind of short-circuited, or he was like it's kind of like
Yeah.
sort of hopeless, or like it's everything I know is a lie, and
He definitely
I
cracked.
seem a mix of all these things, and then his brain on like query just went crazy.
He yeah.
But there was some sort of logic there with the zero is one and the one is zero and the all those things he was thinking about.
Yeah, that
But I
stuff I
thought it
do
was
not
above me.
understand. That stuff I simply I don't know. To me, that read like nonsense. I'm sure it is meaningful. Like I'm sure Baker thought that through, and maybe it's even referencing specific philosophical concepts. But that made absolutely no sense to me, other than the obvious like allusions to binary,
Yeah.
as like a code. But like I don't know how that leads into concepts of the absolute and committing suicide to reach it.
Yeah. So the whole zero thing. So on page 397 on the paperback, thus the utility of zero, something that was not, something that pinched all existence, every origin and destination into a singular point, into one. That kind of reads to me like everything's happening all at once, kind of like the White Leg Warrior sees things that
Mm.
um, I don't have the answer. I just throwing ideas out, but it's kind of what it read to me, is that everything's happening at once. So that doesn't. Yeah, that's kind of the way I kind of try to wrap my mind around it, but I'm not sure.
No, I mean that's definitely an interesting idea and reading that I think is getting to what Baker is trying to explore here. I guess I just still don't understand the like the zero is one. Like I don't know the like the equivalent. I mean, because clearly he's talking about like concepts, like not like literally, zero. The number zero equals the number one, right? Like this is like these are like this philosophical idea of like a 0 point equals this like 1 point, as you were kind of talking about, Steve. And but I just struggle to wrap I don't know, wrap my head around it. What was can you explain that again, Steve? Kind of what you were saying?
Because it talks about existence coming into a singular point. So the singular point being zero, zero being the absolute and the logos. So the way that I kind of, again, I don't have the answer. I'm just throwing ideas out, but I think the way that I read it is kind of like this existence. Everything's happening at once. So if everything's happening at once and we have a singular point, kind of like the White Luck Warrior sees we need to observing things like things have already happened because they're all happening at once. So if that's the case, then maybe death isn't really death.
I gotcha. Okay. So it's saying that like even like the potential like nothingness of oblivion isn't true nothingness because everything is happening at the same time, and so you are still present, and that is absolute is that point of like the, everything coming together. I don't know. I mean that's
Yeah.
an you criticize yourself, Steve, but that is an intelligent observation. Like I see kind of what you're saying there. I do think yeah, it's confusingly written, but Bakker clearly is going for some big ideas there, as he usually is.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if it's something. I mean, it's got something to do with like cause and effect, and the fact that they're not sequential in the real, in I guess reality as he now discovers it, right? And something about like the zero God is where there's no like cause and effect are not like one causing the other one. They're like both happening at the same time or something. It,
The the
yeah.
the, the problem I find with all of this is the problem introduced in two chapters later, which I
Mm-hmm.
mean we'll get to discussing in details, but like Bakker basically threw a wrench in his entire idea of how the metaphysics of this world worked.
Mm.
Uh, at least what it seemed like to me, as it had been laid out to us, which is not a criticism, because that's clearly very intentional and is the number one moment where my jaw was on the floor. And
Mm.
I'm talking about the White Luck Warriors, the future he saw not coming to
Yeah.
pass, right? And we can talk about that more in detail in a bit, but it it to me throws a huge wrench in the idea that everything is happening at the same time, right? Because
Yeah.
fundamentally, if White Luck Warrior sees the future, but that future isn't actually real, then that means it's not all happening at the same time, and
Mm.
that the present is the only moment that actually exists.
Mm.
So if existence is in one point and it's all happening at once, if we're in the present, so that means it can be changed. So is it really all happening at once, the past and the present? And also,
Right.
if existence is a zero point, a singular point, then if you cease to exist, then where do you go? And does it matter if
Mm.
you survive or not?
That's interesting. Yeah.
But all the
I
other stuff that the White Light Warrior saw, everything happened.
well, right. He
So,
clearly has some prescience, but it seems to me like it's more
but even
limited
if just a little
prescience.
bit of a future can be seen, it still can't cause and effect. Still doesn't work. Somewhat, right? It's a bit like they're
Well, it's a
both
paradox,
right.
right? Yeah. I mean, to me, it reads almost like how the Dunyane their probability trance, right? Where it's like it
Mm.
seems like he's almost calculating it. But it
Mm.
certainly is the way it's written, it seems like he actively sees it and the gods
Mm.
actively see the future.
Yeah.
But like even that clearly doesn't work because I mean, as we have discussed, right, that like the no god exists outside of it. They do not physically see the no god. They do not
Yeah.
know that the no god exists. Even though presumably they would hear mortals talking about the no god, right? But
Mm-hmm.
they just like simply they're like it's like they have this like objective concept that the no God doesn't exist, except they're wrong, right?
Yeah.
Which in and of itself throws a wrench in that whole idea. And then on top of that, you have, I mean, I guess since we're discussing it, like, what are your, Steve and Dan, you probably have a better idea of potential
Yeah.
answers to this. So I guess this is more maybe a question for Varsha.
I mean, I'm not gonna
Trying to,
say it, but like it's possible that everything is already happened, but the gods have blind spots, right? It doesn't mean that because everything already happened, they also see everything, right? As we already saw from the no God. That could be one interpretation.
Right. But it's a paradox that doesn't make any logical sense if their vision is actually
Yes.
like they can't
Yes.
be simultaneously omniscient and not omniscient. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
the fact that they fundamentally, one, cannot see the no God, and two, that uh Kelmomus was effectively the blind spot here, right? That
Hmm.
he, no one, not Kellis, not the White Luck Warrior, not anyone, saw him coming, and he essentially broke the future of the White Luck Warrior, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore I assume Yatwar saw. I mean, I guess my question for Varsha, what I was getting at was, do you think, like, I was trying to grapple with this. Do you think this is like means he has? Because I assume it's Kalmomos, right? It is kind of the center of this break in the temporal path. Do you think it's because he has a connection to the no god, which isn't something I'd really considered? Like maybe that's something. I haven't seen a lot of connections there, but like I don't know. Or do you think it's a jokely and that it's like when the gods are competing against each other, they can't see the future because it's an inherent paradox because they're already fourth dimensional beings, and so they're sort of working against each other in a sort of weird paradoxical logic there, that breaks my brain trying to think about it. I'm curious what your thoughts are there about like why, since we're talking about this anyway, why the future didn't work out the way the White Luck Warrior saw it.
Um, yeah, I guess the no God thing is an interesting point. I was rereading this section about zero when Steve was reading that out, and it made me think of a few different things. Like, I guess they're all converging, all the belief systems in some ways. This feels a lot like what the non-men worship, for instance, or it even sounds a little bit like the no God has been described. So, is it possible? Like, I don't know, this seems completely ridiculous at this point, but is it possible that the no God is just the God of gods personified and brought down somehow, and that's the gap that the splinters can't see? I don't think it is. I don't think that's true. I don't think anything we've read so far confirms to that. But also the description of this god is so much like the the what is this? The god that wait, yeah. The zero god, the absence that was the qubit of all creation. That and the no god is what? Nothingness. I don't remember how it was described, but it felt like in similar terms, like again, like a bit of an absence, I think, was how it was described. But
I mean that's an interesting, again, paradoxical, but like it's like a paradoxical logic, right? That you're like what you're describing here, that like if God is everything, then God is also nothing, right?
hmm,
And because nothing is part of everything potentially, and so if the no God is in some way sort of like the actual representation of like, if you're looking at like Christian theology, the Holy Spirit, maybe, or even Jesus, like the idea that like, both the Holy Spirit, like for, concept for people who don't know, the Trinity, which is mostly seriously believed in like, by my understanding, like Catholic theology, and there's a lot of arguments about it, but is that like, you have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, right? And they're all God, and they all exist as God simultaneously, but they're also all separate beings. It's like this inherent paradox, right? And so if the no God is part of like the God of gods, aka the universe, made manifest in the physical reality as like a separate but also simultaneously the same entity, like I think that is an interesting idea that would make sense, right? Is if it's like the universe, which includes like nothingness, if it's everything manifesting as like a nothing entity, right? This like zero God. That's an interesting idea, and I do think, again, in its weird inherent paradoxical way, is logically consistent. maybe that's not even the right term for it, but like it makes sense in the story potentially. So I like that idea, Varsha. I also like what you pointed out about how it seems like all the religions are true in their own way. Like that's such an interesting observation that I hadn't thought about, but you're like, right, like we have now reason to believe that like oblivion is real and the non-men what they believe is real. Like the gods are clearly real, but they're also like clearly kind of demons, which is what, the Fanon believe, and it's just kind of your point of view. And so it's like everything that everyone believes is like simultaneously real in a weird, again, like almost paradoxical way.
Just like with, sorry, what? Just like with the singularity thing, which again, like I love it when I could be reading too much into this, but I don't think so. I love it when authors take scientific concepts and then turn them into fantasy, magic, world building stuff. This
Yeah.
is, I think, it sounds a lot like the Big Bang, sort of. But yeah, I highlighted it. I'm pretty sure it was because of that, not because I understood anything else.
It's interesting. Yeah, a lot of interesting ideas all around.
Yeah. So to your question about Kelmomus, I think honestly I didn't even realize that there's that contradiction there, which is so like that's a great point that he is special and how he can't be one of the god. Okay, the Ejokli question, the Narinder guy, is he Yatvars or Ejoklis? I don't think I'm clear on that yet. If
Yachtworth, I think.
if he's Yatvars, but they are Ejoklis assassins. He
Yeah.
thought he was, or it was just Kelmom is just mistaken about that.
Yes, I
Or
think he's
did
wrong.
Esmond think she was hiring Ejoklis assassins, but she ended up hiring a Yatvar assassin?
Yes.
Okay, that
Going
makes sense.
back to last book when that happened, my reading of it, and I totally could be wrong because it is written kind of confusingly, and I think we talked about this at the time, was that the White Luck Warrior killed the actual Ajokli assassin and essentially like took his place, like filled
Yeah.
his role, so that he was there to be hired by Esmonet to then kill Maithanet to gain the passageway into the position where he would ultimately be a part of Kellis's death, which then didn't happen. Right?
But do we know that this is when he was supposed to die? Like,
Yeah. I
or
think
like
it's pretty
that
explicit.
this was the moment that they were building up to. It's not some other future, or there is still a possibility for it to happen that this miss was part of the predicted
Well,
future, that
technically,
they'll have another one, another
right?
interaction, right? Yeah.
Technically, oh god, what's his name? Sorwheel also is the White Luck Warrior that should kill Kellis,
Yeah.
right?
Right. That is again getting into the weird paradox of existing simultaneously separately but also as the same being at the same time. It's strange, right? Because you do have Sorwheel still that like loaded gun we're waiting to see go off, but
Yeah.
we've seen the White Luck Warrior now. I mean, what I do think is explicit is the White Luck Warrior, as we have been following him in his weird atemporal point of view that is so often hard to parse. He was surprised that Kellis did not die there.
Yeah.
Like he has a moment of shock,
Mm.
and he does
Okay.
see the specific like ceiling coming down on Kellis, and then that ceiling does come down, but Kellis is not there when it falls down because Kelmomus has called out.
Wait. Ceiling coming down. Didn't we see? And I don't remember if it was in book 1 or book 2. Him stabbing Kellis to death. Isn't that how Kellis died
Yeah,
in
isn't
previous
it
visions
supposed
of
to
the White Luck
be
Warrior?
some sort of combination of a wall falling down and then some core going through and then him stabbing through the space left, right? There's some like weird
Combo.
convoluted way that he actually gets to it, right? But yeah.
Right. No, I mean,
So
yeah, that adds up. But like the thing that explicitly like goes differently, right, is Callus isn't like
Yeah.
impaled on like debris,
Something is different because they all get distracted.
right?
So we know from previous visions of Kellis being killed that this was the scene where he was supposed to die.
Well, the vision literally happens just before. It's like the same chapter.
But wasn't there one all the way at the beginning when the White Luck Warrior was first introduced, when they told us how Kellis was going to die, or did they just tell us he lay dead? A bunch of
My
people were dead, and
my my memory of it is that he sees Kellis's blood and maybe his blood on his hands, and he sees Kellis lying dead, but like it wasn't clear exactly how Kellis
Something
died
like that.
in his vision.
okay,
Like it was
okay.
like one of the classic Bakker moments of like he tells you like all these details around it, but not the actual like event in question. You know what I mean? But I don't, I could be misremembering too. You could be right. I don't know for certain. I'd have to check.
Okay, that makes sense. I think, yeah, it was probably just. I am so sorry. The surrounding events, not the actual stabbing or like how he dies. Okay, yeah. So that brings us back to your question. If Kelmomus is an age, so is the voice in his head somehow tied to the no god? Like, and we know Kellis has been talking to some voice, which we may or may not, which we think might be the no god, right? Because when he was on the circumfix, it felt like the no god was talking to him. And he said, I've been listening to the no god, much like Kelmomus has been listening. But he didn't say I'm listening to the no god. He said, there was a voice that was talking to me. I've been doing what it's been telling me to do. And
No,
Kelmomus is doing pretty much the same thing.
he is not doing what the voice is telling him to do. That's a big difference between Kellis and Kelmomus. Kelmomus is doing what the voice is telling him to do. Kellis is not. Kellis is actively not, because the voice is telling him, right, to like reap the crop of human beings, to essentially like kill them all so the gods can feast on them, or that's like the implication. And Kellis is like, no, I'm not going to do that.
But didn't he tell, was it Proyas, that he's been listening to the
He has
voice?
heard it. He has heard the voice, but he hasn't been cooperating.
Like he
Doing
also
what he-
says like it's insane or something. It's like
Yes.
yeah.
Hmm.
That's it. I'm not convinced that there aren't multiple voices. I think that there is a voice that I'm now believe is a Jokli and a voice that is the no god. And I definitely don't think those are the same, because he definitely hears the no god. And I guess it's ambiguous enough that maybe that's part of the, mandate visions, Swatha visions.
Mm.
But although he seems to have circumvented them somehow, now he's talked about, right? But because like when he's there, like he hears what we know to be the no god saying the no god things, the senile shit of like what am
Yeah.
I, things like that. So there's something there, and then he has some other voice that is talking to him in a much more rational way that is in some ways scarier because it's telling him to do all of these horrible things. And I think that's a Jokely at this point.
I guess do we know that that part where there's someone he's talking to someone under the tree and above the granary and all those things. Do we know that's the same voice he's hearing, or is that maybe I don't know, maybe it's the same as the head of the pole? It's like when he went to the other side or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, true. Right. I mean, exactly. I think there's potentially multiple voices going on at different times.
Yeah.
He's like the most schizophrenic, but the voices are real.
So
Kelmomus, I don't know.
Sorry.
At this point, I'm really confused by Kelmomus because I really thought he was dealing with a Jokely because of the obvious parallel, like opening, his story. And clearly his story does have to do with a Jokely in some way, but I'm not sure if the voice is a Jokely. Just because, again, just like kind of reiterating my theory from before, the vision that a Camian had, it was a Camian of letter C, Kelmomus's death. That was definitely a Jokely holding Kellis in his hand, which means like if it's not him talking, I'm gonna eat a sock. Like that's got to be, at the very least, he has plans for Kellis. I don't know what those plans are. I have no idea what the hell is going on. Maybe he's just he's a trickster god, so maybe he's just like chaos. That's all I want, But we'll see. I don't know. Kelmomus, he's a big question mark for me though.
Yeah.
So my question with a Jokely is, so if it turns out that a Jokely was the one manipulating all of this, and that's why, the guy wasn't able to kill Callus, and that means he does have a bit of a central role. The prologue of the series started with him, after all. But what makes him interesting to us, I think, is my question. For like, we introduced Yathwar, but we built her, like, he built her up properly and made her interesting. She's out to kill Kellis, and so we care about Yathwar. But what is interesting about Ajokri, other than like he likes to sow chaos? Or is that is that what is breaking the determinism? Like he's the random chance that's breaking determinism?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's unclear at this point. I think we'll have to see how things resolve. I think, beyond the obvious, like the statue thing that again you brought up that from the prologue of this series, uh, one of the big reasons I felt like Kilmomus was an obvious avatar for Jokli was that he is very chaotic and he's always described as a monkey, right? He's very
Mm.
impish. He is the younger brother, right? He's like a sick, murderous, fucked up brother, right? And so in some ways, I almost feel like they're kind of parallel creations. And that's part of the reason I was so shocked by this seemingly connecting Ajokli with Kellis is because I wouldn't associate Kellis with a trickster god. You know what I mean? Like that's not he feels much more like a Gilgail or like
Yeah.
I don't know, like one of the other gods, or even no god, right? But I mean, as you said, maybe Ajokli's playing everyone, right? And maybe it is all just a chess game between the gods and they don't see the no god because they are not concerned about the no god. So it's all just like, Yatwar is secretly competing against a Jokli who is competing against, Yatwar, and who knows what Gilgail and all the other gods are in all this. But I guess they're
Yeah.
just taking a backseat and watching everyone play with their toys.
Yeah. Or maybe Kellus knows what's going on and he's like, it's all his plan.
It may be. You never know with Kellis.
Never know.
That continues to be one of the big question marks of the series is how much does Kellis know and how much has he planned for? I mean, getting to that, he came
Yeah.
back. Why did he come back?
Why
I
didn't he
thought he'd
come back?
abandoned the Empire.
I
That's
mean,
crazy.
I was asking last week about what was connecting the moment
Yeah.
thread with everything else, and you guys were just sitting there. How do you
Yeah.
keep such poker
And you were
faces?
saying too, like, oh, how is he supposed, how the White Laquar is supposed to kill Kellus if Kellus is so far away, right? And
Yeah.
well, now you see all everything makes sense, right? Somewhat.
Oh man, nobody play poker with Dan and Steve.
What is his plan? Like, what does he want? Is he actually trying to protect the Empire after all?
Hmm.
Like, why did he wait this long? It seems like he could have come back much sooner to like deal with the siege has been going on
Yeah.
for like months at this point. I'm so
Well, in
confused by
theory,
that took me aback.
he the embargo he did for the communication that also applied to him because like Esminet also didn't have any
Right.
communication with him, right? So yeah, it's a good question.
Right. And like what changed? Like why did
Yeah.
he decide? Clearly something happened that made him decide I'm gonna go back now. And I mean I guess that's the question. Did the voice say something to him? Maybe that's it. I don't know.
Okay, so the Caesarum person
Yeah.
was spinning up a storm that they kept referring to as a whirlwind.
Yeah.
That can't be a coincidence.
I don't know. Well, I
I
thought the whirlwind
Right?
was Kellus, not Mappa was doing like the waterfall thing.
I
yeah.
thought the whirlwind was what the guy was spinning up, like the
I
storm
think
that
the whirlwind
the.
is what Kellus uses to block like Corey and other things coming to him. I
Oh, okay.
think.
So Kellis made the storm?
I
That would
thought
make a
so.
lot of sense.
Okay.
Thematically that adds up. Connections there. I mean, there have been again clear from book two, and I mean book two of the first series, The Warrior Prophet.
Okay.
There have been clear connections between the No God and
Yeah.
Kellis. I still have no idea what it means.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on there, but there are definitely clear like
Yeah.
thematic and
Yeah.
narrative, strands connecting those two.
I guess before we get back to moment, should we talk about Kellus leaving and what happened in the Great Ordeal? Because that's, I guess, it's kind of
Yeah,
short, I guess, what happens.
that's fitting. Um,
Because, well, I guess there's the aftermath of the nuclear explosion, right? Which is not great.
So he told Proyas, don't don't eat anyone with radiation sickness. You can eat everyone else. Bye. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Yeah. What does he say? He says something must be eaten. Yeah.
Yes.
It is a really interesting setup for the final book that he essentially left Proyas and was like, "You're in charge now. Make them strong. They're strong. Lead them. You know,
Yeah.
have them go crazy, but just don't eat
Yeah.
radioactive meat."
I guess there's I guess it's kind of like there's two great ordeals now. It's like the great ordeal of the radioactive decaying people, and then the other remaining people, and the descriptions of what happens with it is like horrific.
It
And
is.
like the whole feel, like the sea covered in corpses and everything. I would not want to be there. Let's just say that.
So one of your predictions from last week, Carl, was that the Great Ordeal would reduce significantly in size. I guess one of the ways is that they get eaten by their
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough out there.
And I like the part where he's like, what's the name? The leader of the Scalded. That he starts walking on the corpses to cross the river, and it's like the miracle, like Jesus walking on water, but he's walking on dead shrunk and people. That was very
That's messed up. Yeah.
interesting
I'm
imagery.
just
Cooked meat.
surprised. Sorry. I'm just surprised they called it the Great Scalding and not the Holy Scalding, because everything to do with Keris is apparently holy, something or the other. Yeah.
I
What?
don't have a lot of thoughts
Yeah.
about this section or that chapter. I'll admit. I don't know if Varsha you have any more other than it's horrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm very intrigued by where Proyas is at this point and where his story is
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
My question is, why did Talos do all this psychological manipulation to then leave Proyas in charge, right? He must have a plan, right? Or did he not plan on leaving him in charge? I don't know.
Did he always plan to come back? Because that if he was training Proyas to take leadership, he was planning to leave the Great Ordeal, whether or not he intended to come back.
He definitely was planning on leaving. Like that has for a while I wondered if he was planning on dying, and maybe that still is part of it, but like he clearly was preparing Proyas for something to lead, right? But I don't know what, the end game is here. Like surely he doesn't expect Proyas to lead them, against Golgotharoth. Like he's gonna come back, but I guess he's like, I need you to be ready. I don't know why he couldn't do that like as just like a zealot though. Like why? And I guess Proyas is still a zealot. He's talked his way back, in a full circle, but like, that's kind of Proyas' eternal arc here, unfortunately. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see, I guess, how this all
we'll
plays
see.
out.
Do you think the No God is coming back near Moment? Or like that's where the rebirth is happening and that's why he needed to come back? Like
That would be really crazy, is if he doesn't end up coming, or whatever the No God is, doesn't come back at Golgotharoth, but
They smuggled him
in
somewhere
Moment.
else in secret. Solo diversion.
at where the shrunk, he needs to speak through the the voices of.
Maybe.
It doesn't.
Or go ahead.
Sorry.
No,
No,
please.
it doesn't seem like much that. It doesn't seem like Kellis. Whatever Kellis does is calculated and for a purpose. So if that's assuming that's true for a second, why would he not have Saban lead the rest of the way for the Great Ordeal? Why have Proyas, who, if you want someone loyal and you can manipulate, if you're Kellis, why not have Saban finish the job?
It's an interesting question. My first reaction to that is maybe the reason he's preparing both of them is that he was prepared for one of them to die, and that he foresaw that one of them, he maybe wasn't sure which one would die, and then the other one could take over for him. My question then from that would be, why didn't he think they would both die? What was his contingency for that? But Kellis is an enigma. I don't know.
But it's not like he died accidentally. He knew that he was going to nuke the place, so he could have told Sabon to stay back.
Right. Yeah, it's true. That's a great point, right? Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what his plan
Maybe he
is.
decided just before, it's like, oh, he did this manipulation, and he was like, oh, you're right, you're not, so I can sacrifice you, or something like that, maybe.
But sacrifice to what end, though? Unless he wanted him dead because he didn't want anybody else knowing the truth about him.
But why even tell him then? Like, does he have a guilty conscience? Like, I don't think
Yeah.
so.
Just for fun. Just for fun.
Just for fun. Well, okay, so one thing I would say while we're
Boring, no
talking about this
entertainment.
is it does occur to me that, a classic element of trickster archetypes is they do their work by manipulating people, right? Which is very Dunyan and therefore very Kellis, right? So I guess that is one big connection Kellis has, is like he has presented himself with these mantles of the warrior prophet, right? And a lot of these mantles we associate with, someone, like a godlike Gilgail, right? Like this warrior. But, the truth of him is that he is a trickster. And so I guess that is an interesting idea. And also, adding on to that, it is interesting potentially thematically and for his character emotionally, if this guy who is the master manipulator, like the capital M, capital, like two capital M's master manipulator, is himself then manipulated by something, I guess, as it would be. But that was just an additional thoughts that occurred to me as we were talking about this.
So, do you think? I'm trying to remember. The Dunyan, do they believe in God? Do they believe
No.
that a god or any of
No.
the gods exist? They don't, right? So
They do not.
Kellis went insane from realizing that the gods exist. To what you were saying,
Yep.
Carl, about him being manipulated. Does he think himself insane because gods don't exist, but there is a god talking to him? Why? So here's my question about it all. Kellis seems to believe that he's in fact insane, right? What is the definition of insane that he is operating with? Because let's say it is that you believe in things that don't exist, or that's the part of it that makes him think himself insane. That means he still doesn't believe the gods exist.
I'm sure he knows the gods exist. He's been
right.
Then
I
why does
agree
he
with
think
that.
himself insane?
That
Or
is a
whoever's
really
writing
interesting question.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel very confident, 99.9% confident, that the reason Moingus called him insane was because he believed the gods did not exist, and that there was that conflict between them, right? Kellis, that is a very good
maybe it's
question.
an ironic way. It's kind of like, insane by Dunyan standards.
Right.
Maybe.
He's just defining himself by the way his father would define him.
Maybe.
I do think it would be very darkly funny and interesting. And I don't think this is going to happen, but it would be really interesting if it did, if Kellis is legitimately schizophrenic and it's just like, for whatever reason, has developed this late onset like schizophrenia and is actually just here. Like he actually is, supremely competent is all he does, but he is literally hearing voices that aren't there. Like not even the gods. It's just voices in his head.
Maybe.
I do not think that's happening, but that is an interesting idea.
Yeah.
Like, how would a Dunyan react to that? Like, what would they think? Would they be aware that they're insane? You know what I mean? Like,
maybe
it's an interesting thought experiment.
For all the logic that's been bred into them, they'd have to recognize, like they are apparently a very inward-looking people, so they have to know the voice is not coming from what they are, not the mover or whatever their definitions are. Yeah, so anyway, so that essentially, isn't that what happened to the survivor too then? Whatever happened to Kellis at the realization that the gods exist and that prophecy is a thing. And so when he realized that Mimara was able to read him like the Dunyan read people, except it's with the god's eye, it's like, oh, cool, gods exist, and now he need. Yeah, I still don't have the complete logical connection with
I think you can just.
wanting.
I think if you
Yeah,
just say he went crazy, brain went crazy with query, and he killed himself.
yeah.
It's good enough, let's say.
Well, I
Maybe.
did have this, and I had it in my notes, but I looked it up now on page 407. He had survived, he, the one unburdened, the one tasked, the one who refused to eliminate the interval between him and his son. The fractions of the Dunyan had been sorted, and he, the least able, the most encumbered, had been the one selected, the survivor. Selected with the capital S. He who had refused to know, who had embraced the darkness that comes before, he is defective. So as with the absolute surrender, forfeiture, loss, at last he understood what made the things holy. Loss was advantage, blindness was insight, revelation. At last he could see it, the sideways step that gave lie to logos. 0, 0 made 1.
Who knows?
It is interesting to think about, the idea that maybe regarding Kellis's insanity, if there is something of his insanity portrayed in the survivor's insanity, and that maybe there is a parallel there that we can draw. Whether it's like maybe the reason Kellis calls himself insane is because he starts to feel these sort of compassionate feelings, that he goes beyond the hard cold logic
Yeah.
of the Dunyan in the same way the survivor does, right? The survivor just instinctively saves his son, even though his son is defective in the Dunyan, point of
But
view.
I like that you had pretty much called this out for like a long time, Carl. That they save it. They they only follow logic, but in the end they still have the instinct, right?
Right, they still do. They still act on things, right? And even the survivor last week, I think I mentioned it was like this dude saved a kid. That is not a logical
Yeah.
thing to do in a situation, right, where you're just fighting to survive. Uh, which is one of the reasons I got attached to him because I was like, he did this thing
Yeah.
even though he's like bred and trained not to do it. He did this thing that I think even like yes, it's his kid, but like that is a good thing, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And I find him very complex and interesting and tragic because he fucking kills himself, like before he could like really do good, like more good beyond that. And now we're left with the most dysfunctional family in all of Irwa. That's actually not true. The most dysfunctional family are the, Imperial
Yeah.
Anasurin Boars, but you know, the this is still the dysfunctional family, this little triad.
Or if Varsha would say, these fucking kids.
These fucking
Yes. Oh, I sorry. I want to go back to something that we were talking about earlier, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
The yeah, to what I was saying earlier about what the point was of him jumping off. Like, I guess my question was, w- what did, let's say he's not, I don't think he's coming back. What did we get out of the survivor thread? We found out that that Kellis has two more children and that there are two more candidates for and Anna Surumbor will return at the end of the world or whatever that prophecy was. But what what else did we was the purpose of this thread? I think story wise was where I was getting at, and I wanted to gather opinions on that. Like, I'm sure it was done intentionally, I just don't
well,
know
so
what it is.
to me, these books with as rich, like, I there's this idea I think in like critical theory where people tend to isolate a particular component of a story, whether it's the plot or the characters or the themes, and say that this book is driven by this thing. That maybe it has the others, but it is, and it's a simplification. I think it is a bit facile, but I if you were to classify this series with all the richness in it, I think you could safely say it's a thematically driven series, right? Like I think it's concerned about the ideas more than anything else, potentially. And so going off that train of thought, I feel like what the purpose of the survivor is to sort of show the flaws inherent in the Dunyan and deconstruct them on a fundamental level. That it's like he is literally in some ways the last of the Dunyan. He's the survivor, right? And it's showing that like one, that he, as flawed as he is in their view, is the last survivor, right? Arguably the kid is, and Kellis. This is an open debate, but on top of that, it is within his character personally that he breaks down the idea of how they view the absolute and that their logic, and that he's like, oh, the darkness that comes after is real this entire time, which I think is also a flawed idea because we've seen that it's not always true, right? So that's an open question, an open conversation. But in my mind, he exists. I think you can draw character, points to, again, like I think particularly with Kellis, I think he is a sort of, although they don't interact, he's like, foil isn't the right term, but he is like intentionally, I think, a parallel to Kellis in the same way that all of Kellis's kids are in some way kind of in exploring some aspect of Kellis. That said, I do think just thematically, he's fundamentally about showing the final deconstruction of the Dunyan ideal that had been built up in all the other books.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yes, it's kind of
Um,
showing that
and
Dunyan philosophy doesn't really work in this world, sort of, right?
Right, exactly. And that him jumping off is the ultimate expression of that like, oh, the way this philosophy leads to is to you literally breaking down and committing suicide. That it's like, it's the most like literal way of showing like this philosophy doesn't work.
Yeah.
You kill yourself. Like he kills himself.
I wonder
right?
if he also did it for like, oh, everything he was doing before, he was like, oh, I know what the causes will come before, so I know what comes after. So now maybe he needs to do something that is not at all governed by what he knows comes before, but governed by what he knows comes after, and maybe that will make him, you know what I mean? Some sort of paradox like that.
I think you're right. I definitely think you're right. I mean, that's an interesting idea because he is clearly driven by ideas of what comes after life, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the idea of the absolute. Is it is this like the 0 point that is one, right? It's null.
Yeah.
It's the nothing that is everything.
There is a Ted Chiang story in which a mathematician finds out that the mathematical system is inconsistent, and that makes her suicidal. I wonder if this is the equivalent of that.
I think so. I absolutely think. I mean, I think if you were to look at this from like a character psychological level, that's exactly what happens here. I think his entire world has broken down, and like the last thing he had was the Dunyan worldview, and through Mimara and Akamian, but particularly Mimara, and then seeing the outside world, it all breaks down, and he realizes it just causes him to, in some sense, despair, and then through despair, find peace in suicide.
So that was the other thing that I was grappling with. Was it really despair that made him jump, or is that just the logical conclusion to all of it? Like, was there really feeling behind his action?
Totally. I think it was feelings driven, in the same way that all of the Dunyan's shit is feelings driven, even though they may have a logic to it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the paradox of like where they think through, like they have a logic, in the same way that like he logically thinks, oh, this is the absolute, so this is how I'm going to achieve the absolute, but it is still ultimately driven emotionally by like, well, why does he even want to get to that, right? It's because everything is broken down around him.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't feel like he can achieve the absolute on the mortal plane. So he's like, well, the only option then is to kill myself.
So
I think it's both,
that's the question. Yeah. So I guess that was sort of what I was trying to figure out. I guess it's not that's how I get there. So it's still a means to the end that he's trying for, versus oh, what is the point of all of this? Let me jump. Like those are two different things. Like they're both driven by different feelings, if you will.
Hmm.
I think there's more connection than maybe you're giving credit for, because I think the entire idea of the absolute is that it's all sort of distilled down to this null point, you know? Like it's not nihilistic, but it is sort of the like you can't achieve a thing alive. Like life is sort of, there is no good end other than the end, you know? But that's just my reading. I don't know.
No, that makes sense. It's just that I feel like I've been taking at face value a lot of what the Dunian apparently seemed to be. Like, if we transfer that to the real world, I would agree with everything you said about like this being feelings driven and whatnot. But apparently they have different biology, and
Right.
so I I don't know where to draw the line and say like this is BS and these are all paradoxical, and to just believe that this is how they operate. Do you know what I mean? So
Totally.
yeah, so I guess that's that's what I've been thinking about. That's why the suicide is a very interesting thing to discuss.
Absolutely.
Because you can interpret it all kinds of ways, and I don't know which is right.
I think, I mean, again, my point of view is that it's sort of like these two competing ideas happening at like the same time, you know, in which I guess is, you know, literalized in the maybe literalized isn't the right word, but it is made manifest in the metaphor of, you know, the zero that is one, and that the Dunyan, you know, I think a lot of the exploration is like, in some sense, they are more rational than the humans around them, right? There is a lot of like we've seen it with Kellis, like they are able to function and to read people at a higher level than all of the regular humans around them. They have bred themselves to a point where they are that way. At the same time, I think they are ignorant of their own shortcomings. And so I think it's like kind of a blurred area where it's like, yes, there is some truth to kind of what they're pursuing and how they portray themselves, but it isn't the whole truth. And that if you know, I don't think it's like a black and white situation here, where it's like in some ways, you know, arguably Kellis is superior to the people around him, just in terms of like how he can physically and mentally function and kind of control himself. But at the same time, he still is impacted by the darkness that comes before. He just doesn't understand what his version of that is. You know, like there's still the blind spot, I guess, which is the same thing you see with the gods, right? That we're discovering is that even they have their blind spot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think achieving the absolute is very much, I guess, at least part of their darkness that comes before. Um, I, yeah, I guess there's an inherent paradox there again. Like you want to achieve the paradox, and that is your main mover, but you also want to be
Right.
the mover of all your thoughts and whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. It's a paradox. Like you just can't. To want is to inherently be influenced, you know, and so even if, you know, even if what you want is to not want, you're still wanting something. You know what I mean? Like it is. It's that kind of circular logic.
Yeah.
I think the open question is still like, and it's a philosophical concept, so I guess in some sense there is no answer. But you know, what is the absolute? Like how? Like is the survivor even right? Like is death the way? Oblivion, is that the way to achieve the absolute, as the Dunyan might classify
The
it?
non-men seem to think
Or
that's, I guess, their absolute is oblivion, right?
right,
And
you know, is absolute the god of gods? Right? Is
maybe.
absolute just like the function of the universe? Like I think it's that itself is still a conversation, and I don't know it's one that there is an answer to.
Or not.
I think we could.
Yeah, I mean that's fair enough.
I think the
Right, we have a book.
The non-men have a very different view on death and the absolute because they are immortal. So I think their view of the absolute would be pretty different than anyone else, just because they they are immortal and they can't die. Well, they can die, but so yeah, it's a whole that would be a whole different conversation. But you know what's interesting? I think is that we started off saying not a whole lot happened, and here we are an hour in still talking about it.
I mean, a lot did happen in Moment, to be
Yeah,
honest.
no, I did. Yeah,
But we
Oh,
haven't
Moment
even
was
started
huge.
talking about what happened there.
yeah,
We started.
Somewhat, yeah.
Little.
We
Yeah.
talked about one part of like the 5, 6 things that happened in that chapter, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Moment was
Yeah, because
crazy.
it starts with the
That
whole
was
scene in Faniel's camp, right? The whole sorcerer's battle, and I guess Faniel and Satma and Mappa all get killed by Kellus, right? And there's a big
that
battle,
was crazy.
and then what else?
Teliopa died.
Oh yeah, first the first thing, Filiopa
Oh
died.
fuck!
I mean,
Why'd
Kilmomus,
you have to
yeah,
remind me?
fuck Kilmomus.
I hate that kid.
Well, what did he have to do with it though? The assassin killed him, killed her. She just like showed up.
He
She
just
knew she
stood
was
there.
going to die and she showed up. Why?
Hate it.
Yeah,
Hate it.
Filiopa was like the only
Th-
kind of nice one.
Yes, I liked
Yeah,
her. She
And
she
then we
she,
find out
she rocks the purples.
she has never been more like your heart goes out to her. You find out she's been molested by
yeah,
Enrilitas the
she was
entire
raped by
time.
him. It's like, yeah, it's
Horrible. And then yeah, there was
yeah,
that was a bleak section. That was really that made me really sad.
yeah, because you actually see that she has like feelings, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But okay, so sorry, today's discussion is all about the Dunya. But so we're told that Indrilatas has the strength in him as much as Keldis, maybe even more, and whatnot. And the way it manifests apparently is through a great deal of
Yeah,
cruelty. Why is that? Like, could could it just go the other way too? Indifference, perhaps, but this is outright like cruelty, raping and
Yep.
whatnot. His
yeah.
intention to harm. So, why is that the logical conclusion of the Dunian way of thinking? Like,
I don't think it is. I mean, I think he's full of shit. I think he is
He is
crazy.
crazy, yeah.
You know, he's acting out. He there is some logic to his idea that simply refusing to play by the rules of everyone else is in some sense existing outside of them, and therefore in like you know, I don't even know because it's not unemotional because he is again he's still driven by this like desire that is self-destructive and outwardly destructive. It is just cruel. It's cruel, and he does it, I think, because it is cruel. It is outside of what is socially acceptable.
And I think he
I
likes
don't think he
like
does it.
breaking people, making people like pointing out their flaws. I think it's been discussed many times by the characters. Like he likes to tell people their worst things, their worst flaws, to make them, I guess,
Yeah,
feel bad or feel something. I don't know, but yeah,
but what is driving him to do that, though?
he's a psychopath or
the
something.
Is
darkness that comes before.
apparently he
Yeah,
got compassion from Esmenet, and that combined with the strength, quote unquote strength, made him cruel.
well, it's not. It's not rat. I mean, the way I view it is that it is sort of that like I am hurting so much, so I have to lash out. It's like kind of that classic like self-destructive like I feel so much all the time. I'm constantly emotionally overwhelmed by the world and by everyone and everything around me. And so my way of feeling like trying to establish I feel like for him it's like trying to feel like he has power and control. And it's like I don't think it's like psychopathic and cuz I feel like again this is just my reading of it is that he does like he probably a part of him feels really bad when he rapes Beliopa, but that's almost kind of the point. Is he wants to do this like horrible thing to prove that he's like outside of everything, to prove that he does still have control, and because in some way that's like his entire
Yeah,
deal is that everything is so loud, everything is so much, and so I have to exert myself on everything, and you know, he rationalizes it by being like, well, I'm just outside of society. Like, I'm better than you all, you know. But he's really like, you know, he's hurting.
I mean, because he can't.
That's why
Yeah,
Esmond feels bad for him.
yeah. Like he can't enjoy being chained all the time and shitting on the floor and all those things, right? It's like, yeah,
No, but he got there by doing shit like this.
Yes.
So
Yes.
but I mean, we know that he's smart enough that if he wanted, he could, you know, that behave in a way that didn't bring him to a situation in which he was in the situation in which he was, right?
He wants to be in that situation, right?
Or there's nothing he can do to stop himself, I guess. Or, right?
Right, exactly. He can't control himself. Yeah.
Yeah.
see, I understand all of that, but all of that sounds like very human explanation, you know, like what how is this the I'm trying to make sense of how this is supposed to be the Dunian plus human thing working together.
My understanding of how all the kids are described is they have the Dunyan, like, they are in some way physically and mentally superior to everyone else. Like, and in really Toss's case, you could say it's like, it's almost like his brain is working like 1,000 miles an hour. Like, and so he's like, he's overstimulated, right? It's almost like ADHD or autism or something like that. But the way it manifests for him is that he just like, he's feeling so much all the time because he's reading everyone's everything, you know? But it is human. Like, I think that's kind of the point at the end of it. And he and really Toss as an individual cannot function and process all of that like Kellis can through his training and through his kind of even higher breeding. You could, you know, that's how the Dunyan would view it, right? He is more able to control his emotional reaction, kind of clamp down on everything and make himself, you know, act sociopathic as we've described him, right? Where he's just cold. And I would say the mistake is believing that there isn't a human explanation. The Dunyan are human. They have bred themselves to be different in many ways. But like, again, I think there's a crucial point that when I think it's Akamian who says their heads, everything is different, but their heads, like their brains, you know, they do function differently, clearly, but they are still fundamentally human, right? Like they haven't completely changed their genotype. You know what I mean? Like they still have that core. They're still influenced by the darkness that comes before. It's just the way it manifests themselves is differently in all of them.
Yeah. For Merlatzes, I can also imagine him like, you know, not being in control of his madness or whatever, and then seeing Filiopa, which has no emotions, and he's
Right.
like, you know, well, I'm gonna break you, I guess. I'm gonna show you that
That's a
you're
great
also,
point.
you know.
That makes
She is
sense, and that's
the
kind of
Empress.
what Kelmomus did too with the leaving footsteps in the snow thing.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. I'm
Yeah.
convinced.
But
Thank
yeah,
you.
fuck Kilmomus. And I was so happy, you know, when Esmenet sees him, right? Like that small bump in the medallion or whatever, right? And then he sees him like smirking behind her. I was like, finally.
Oh, that was amazing. That was amazing. Oh my God. I felt bad for her. Credit to Bakker because he really did write it and build up to a point where I felt so bad for Esmenet in that moment, but at the same time, I was so relieved that she finally saw through his bullshit and that he fucked up and she was intelligent enough to immediately ping what was happening there.
Yeah.
I was listening to this on the audiobook, so can you tell me, it wasn't clear to me who said I can pretend. Was it
Kilmomus.
Kelmomus or Esmenet? Okay.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know. Well, but also the fact that Kilmomus, after Filiopa is, I guess, dead, like he goes and then he smashes her head with a brick. It's like, what?
He's the worst.
Yeah, he's the worst. And
I hate that kid so much.
I hate him. I hate him.
yeah, it's kind of like, you know, it's like a, how does it? Oh, what's the thing? Like the Band-Aid, you need to tear the Band-Aid at some point, right? That's how it felt, kind of.
Very true.
Yeah.
I wanted it to happen earlier.
Yeah.
I said like Deliopa, I think it was a mistake. Like maybe she would have survived. Probably not, but maybe, like
I guess if the gods want her
flawed
dead, I guess she had come
and
to die.
I think again that was a situation where she, and this is totally open to interpretation. So this is I'm not even, I think she didn't tell Esmenet because she was afraid of hurting Esmenet
Yeah.
more than she was like, Esmenet, she does this, we're going to lose the war. Because like, what was
Yeah.
Esmenet like really doing to keep the city together at that point? You know what I mean? Like, I think that was a daughter afraid of hurting her mother.
So. And also like the part where Esmenet says like she cries to the gods like what did she say? Like, you're not hurting him by killing all these children, you're just hurting me. That was very very true and very sad.
That was heartbreaking, yes.
Because yeah, because Kellis doesn't give a shit really.
No,
apart from the ones he
Esmenet
can use like Serwa and Cayutas, right?
I mean, if they die, would he mourn them though? Still, like,
as long as they did their job, I don't think he cares.
maybe disappointed at most that he lost a resource.
I think he would be sad. But I don't think he would be nearly as sad as the vast majority of people would be sad. Again, he mourns Serwa. This is a thing that is often not discussed or brought up. And I would, to this day, I'm still shocked by it. But he mourned Serwa. I remember my jaw being that was one of the most shocking moments of the Warrior Prophet, where it was like, oh, this dude actually does feel things. He's just really good at stopping himself, and controlling that, right? And not letting his emotions dictate his actions.
Yeah.
So I think he would. I think he would grieve, but he wouldn't express or act on the grief, if that makes any sense. And that he probably would process it much more quickly than your average.
I assume he knows that Komomas is an asshole. He must know. He's, you know what I mean?
Yes, I agree. He's smart enough. He had to have picked up on that, like, virtually immediately, right? As soon as the babies were separated, I feel like certainly by the time Komomas was a toddler, he had to have seen that.
But I guess they've been telling us that he hasn't been around enough to notice his kids, which Maithanet didn't realize too, and he's been around more than Kellis.
Maithanet is not as powerful as Kellis, right?
That's true.
And Komomas is part of the game, so I assume he can somewhat conceal it, I would assume.
From another Duni?
Well, he couldn't conceal it from Imrelatus, and then Kellis is stronger than Imrelatus, but Maithanet it doesn't see as much as Imrelatus, right? We know that, because he's not full, he's completely like that.
That's exactly my logic, is that if Imrelatus saw it, then Kellis had to have seen it. Like, yes, he wasn't around a lot, and clearly he didn't care that much, unless he has some grand master plan for Komomas. He just didn't care that much. But he saw it. Like, he had to know what his kid is. I think he knows what all his kids are. And he just doesn't, he either has his role for them or he just doesn't care. It's not important to him.
Yeah. So when he asked, what did you do, Esme? Was that the line? Was it about how, like, what is it that he's not aware of? What is he getting upset about? Was it all the kids dying, or
maybe he doesn't know yet?
Maithanet being dead?
Like, we don't know. Does he know what's been happening in Momnev this whole time? Like, we don't know, right? Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, so who knows?
I mean, he can't, right? He can't know literally what's
maybe
happening.
He's got spies.
He could maybe predict.
I don't know, or something.
Right.
Isn't his
But that would be, I mean, he could break his own rules, but that would be breaking his rules, right? Because he supposedly cut himself off from them, right?
Isn't his timing kind of impeccable though? He came just as they were about to attack.
Incredible timing. Yeah, impeccable is the right word. It's
in theory, like, you could see it if he actually died there, right? You could just see it as the kind of coincidence that the White Black Warrior is taking advantage of, in a sense, because all the other things that happen to him are very coincidental, very lucky that they all happen in the right timing, right? So if it actually happened like that, then you could see. And then Yator actually does the earthquake, because otherwise the Fanio wouldn't have been able to get into the city, right? Like that was already established. So everything was sort of moved by Yatwer in a sense to make that happen, right? I guess we don't know why Kelos went back. That's we don't know.
Right. And why it didn't work out the way Yatwer and the White Luck Warrior
Yeah.
foresaw. Or at least the way the White Luck Warrior
Yeah.
foresaw. Maybe Yatwer has seen something different. I guess we don't know
We don't know.
yet. We haven't seen Nana Fairy's dead. So yeah,
I think she was fine with that. She was like,
yeah, oh totally. But yeah, we don't have a Yatwirian POV anymore then, I guess. That's interesting.
And I guess, what did you guys think about Milowebby getting his head cut off and replaced by one of the decapitants that is now being sent to kill the King of Zoom? And now Milowebby is one of the decapitants, I guess? Which is interesting.
That is metal.
Interesting.
I mean, that is insane. Very cool moment. Didn't know Kellis could do that.
Yeah.
But so cool that like I'm on board for it. You know, like that's
now
awesome.
That makes you think, maybe what if the captain was a decapitant? Right? Because think about it, he got kind of killed only when they cut his head. It seemed like there's some coincidences, I guess, right?
Huh.
Oh, that's a great theory. Because he acts like a demon, right?
Kind of, yeah.
And if the decapitants are like, yeah, they're demons, they're the Chigra put into people. Holy shit! That makes a lot of sense.
That explains the ageless eyes and
possibly.
Okay.
Him talking about having seen hell, been to hell, is like we seemingly found out he wasn't immortal or wasn't a whatever ascended being, but like maybe he was also, demonic. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, there's something going on with those heads, right? Like that, the head on the pole. There's something going on with Kellos what's doing. We don't know exactly what he's doing, but right, clearly something is.
Fucking heads in Kellis. Yeah. Head on the pole, still no idea. I mean, obviously, this is something we're going to figure out. Like it's repeated so many times that it's clearly going to be explained to us. But I have no idea. I don't know, Varsha, if you have any theories by the end of this book
about the head on the pole.
Yeah.
Huh. I don't know. One of the commenters on the video said they think of it as Kellis on the outside. I guess that's as cool a theory as any other that we have at this point.
They think it's Kellis on the outside?
Yeah.
The head on the pole?
Yeah.
Like a metaphor for Kellis being on the outside?
I guess. Okay. Let me see if I can find the comment. But I believe the way I interpreted it was that he left a bit of himself on the outside, and that's what he's communicating with.
Possibly.
Interesting. So he like cut a piece of his soul and like
I don't know if it was deliberate, like maybe he just escaped and a bit of him left behind. Let's see, which video was it in? When did we talk about the head on the pole? Was it the second or third episode?
I think it was 2 weeks ago.
Maybe he replaced his own head with someone else's so that the demons couldn't. I don't know.
Oh wait, the head on the pole. Okay, sorry. Maybe you guys were just talking about
the fact that you said that means that's not what happened, Dan. Because you're good about not spoiling things for us. That said, that is an awesome idea. Is that Kellis plays such insane 4D chess that he literally replaces his own head so that when he gets assassinated, it's not him getting assassinated, so that he comes back in. That would be insanity. Clearly that's not what happened. That's a cool idea.
Maybe I've just been prepping you. I always tell you lies, and then I tell you the one truth because you expect me to tell lies, right?
That's the Dunyan strat.
But yeah, there's obviously something weird going on, right?
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. Safe to say.
It was the head on the pole in the...
It's come up multiple times, so it wasn't just like one chapter, but I think it was the second discussion was the first time we discussed it. Maybe it was the first. I don't know.
It was 4 through 7.
Okay, so yeah, that's the second, right?
Oh yeah, here it is. From Zach. The says callous in the outside, and the head on the pole is a secure connection to the physical world.
Interesting.
I mean, it definitely has something to do with outside. Like, I don't know that like that's happening outside. I feel like that is something happening on the mortal plane, but like Kellis is so connected to outside that like clearly something, this fourth dimensional experience he's happening or experiencing rather, is, I don't know. I have no idea what's going on with him. I'm confused. Other than I feel like a Joker is involved now.
Yeah.
Do we want to move on to the last chapter?
Yeah, I guess we got Nair
right,
back. He's back.
Oh my god. Yes. This section was just reveal after reveal.
Yeah.
I would never have predicted that. In hindsight, I guess it kind of makes sense because we did get a fade to black death,
Yeah.
right? Like he didn't actually die on screen. There was no body, which is like, that's the trope, right? I just thought he had such a good ending that he was clearly dead, but I guess Bakker had other plans for him. So we'll see where that goes. I will admit I had conflicted feelings. A part of me was like, really? Bringing back Nair? At the same time, it was really cool. So we'll see where it all goes. I certainly enjoyed his presence. He was terrifying, and I was reminded of how much of a piece of shit he is.
And Mimara said he's never seen anyone more damned than him. Right?
Yeah.
Which is saying
that
something.
Totally adds up. Yes, that is. She looked at the captain, right? Like that is saying
looked
something.
At the Yang. He looked at a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Cleric too,
oh yeah, true.
who has accumulated damnation for centuries.
Very true.
So I guess I
guess
now Nair's the head of Sylvendi, right? And he's working with the council, maybe somewhat. It's not clear because he kind of like he's like, oh, I'm not doing what you're saying, right, to Serwa, but he is sort of, right?
This is the same dude who's like, I'm not doing what Kellis is telling me to do, and basically worked with him the entire time in the first trilogy. So this dude he's delusional. He is number one peak delusional. I love to hate him. He's a mess. And he clearly, it's good to see that he didn't improve at all as a human being. If anything, he got worse. It really is remarkable. Stay winning, Nair.
Yeah, and it was also interesting when like how I think like Mimara says like he's oh no, she says it of I don't remember. Does she say you're not one of the people to Serwa or to Nair? I don't remember. Because she says someone like, oh, you're not one of the people, like not one of the Sylvendi. But I don't remember actually if she says, now that I'm thinking, maybe she says it about Serwa. But when I was reading, I thought she said it to Nair, because Nair is not really, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though he is one of them, but
right.
Yeah. And then I guess they chase the child away too. So now they're not together.
I'm scared for that poor boy.
So is he the Anasurimbo at the end of the world?
That's an interesting idea, right? Is that maybe he'll be the last Anasurimbo alive, and he'll be a savior figure, you know, in some way. I don't know. I mean, the whole idea of there being a third trilogy clearly means that there's the open possibility of more story. So I don't know. I'm very curious to see if he lives or dies. I really don't know. I honestly thought he was going to die and the survivor was going to live on, but clearly that didn't happen that way.
Did Nair imply that he's sort of using the server consult thing to spy, like basically to infiltrate the consult and work against them?
I don't think to work against them. I think it was more like I'm using them for my own ends. but he's delusional. He's not. He's doing whatever the fuck they want him to do. Like, I can imagine this is exactly how they got the Skilvindi on their side in the first place. Was like, okay, get one, terrifying person who is so delusional, he'll, drink his own Kool-Aid and do whatever we want him to do if he's convinced, because he will convince himself that he is acting independently. It is interesting, though, to see that, on the flip side of that, Mimar got to him. And so he is now anti-consult. And, there's conflict with him and not Surwa. So we'll see how that plays out. He is certainly a last act, wrench and everything. I don't know where it's going to go. He's not surviving, though. If he did, he's... If Nair comes out alive of this whole series, I'm going to lose my mind. That would be insane. After surviving miraculously, him and that skin spy both. Unbelievable.
Well, the skin spy.
He'll be.
They had rocks fall on him. I mean, I guess it was written.
I guess.
I mean, it doesn't have to be her, right? It could be any skin spy taking on Sarva's face.
guess.
So even if that particular skin spy
That's
died.
true. It could be someone else. I thought the implication was the same one, but you make a good point that, like, why wouldn't they just replace her?
Cool.
Yeah, Nair will be the connecting thread through all three series.
Yeah.
Oh god.
He's the secret main character of this whole
Maybe.
story.
I really did like both the conversation between Nair and Akamian, right? That again, really showing how Akamian thinks and how kind of a bit flawed it, or like how he always tries too much, maybe to. Yeah, it's like why are you doing this? Like it kind of makes no sense.
That's the brilliant thing about Nair is he sees through everyone else's bullshit and he always calls them out on it. He's so good at that, but he is incapable of being truly self-aware. He like always inches up to it, and you see him being like, "Oh yes, he always has these like revelations about himself, at least in the first trilogy." And then he proceeds to act in the same delusional way. Yeah. It's wild and tragic, and he's a great character.
Yeah, I'm happy he's back.
Yeah.
Somewhat.
Mm.
He's interesting.
Yeah. Maybe not for the rest of the world, but
no. He's one of my favorite characters. Well, he might be my favorite. I'm not sure if he's my favorite, but he's one of my favorite.
Did we talk about Mimara? Was that in this set of chapters about what she's carrying?
What carrying what?
Yes.
Twins.
Twins.
True.
That was cool. I love twins.
Do you think there'll be another set of creepy you can't separate them twins? And second question, do you think the fact that she's carrying twins means that somehow she won't be subject to the judging eye curse of only giving birth to stillborn? That or the Kiri? I think there are many variables here.
Yes. You were absolutely right about that. I still feel like her babies are doomed. But
yes, but are they dead doomed or some other doomed?
Well, fair enough. I don't know. I mean, yeah, maybe one of them comes out stillborn and one of them comes out okay. I guess that's a possibility. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be smart.
That is an interesting idea. We'll see. That is definitely that feels like a time bomb for me. I'm waiting for that. I mean, in any story with a pregnant woman, that's obviously a time bomb, but like hers especially with the added aspect of the judging eye and the Kiri, like that. Oh God, I just keep waiting for that to go off.
And the last scene, sorry to jump ahead, but the last scene, are we to interpret that as like she's about to give birth or?
Why? Did her water break?
No, I don't know. They said, so Akamian woke up and he had this moment of terror that the apocalypse is starting. And I think Mimara was crying when she woke him up or something. So I thought that it was starting alongside him talking to Mimara. I don't know. That made me think that maybe she's about to give birth, but I don't know.
I think he was dreaming, like one of his.
Yeah.
He
Yeah, what
dreamed
do you
of the
think
no god.
happened? What do you think was happening in his dream?
The no god. Other than that, I don't know. But clearly he saw the no god up
Hmm.
close.
Chains and the.
Yeah, shadow within the shadow. I mean, he
It
explicitly
might be
sees the sarcophagus, at
sarcophagus,
least.
right?
Yeah.
Through whose eyes?
Night. No Coyote.
Yeah,
Now
now
Coyote?
Coyote is.
Okay, the guy.
That's who
okay,
he's been dreaming
that's-
in
Yeah.
as like an enslaved.
Yeah. Like a
God,
chain
that's
of
sad. That's
slaves
a bleak.
being dragged through
That's so
some
sad.
places. There were some non-men there, right? There was something, some flames, some would say.
Do you think Seswatha knows that now oh, what if it's hell? What if it's not even? I was just thinking it was Golgotroth, but maybe that's in hell. Maybe he is dead.
And the sarcophagus is in
Fuck.
hell. The no god is kept in hell.
I don't know. I
No,
mean, I guess it would make sense for it to be Golgotroth, but
Maybe.
I don't know.
There was something in that section. I think I agree with you, Carl. There was something in that section that made me think that not that they are in hell, but that a piece of hell has infiltrated this place, much like with the dragon and what was the other place? Skilaujas.
Yeah.
And the fields of Mingetta.
Hmm.
Well, it does say, and he knew the fire, realized that his empty reflection wore hell as a wig.
Yeah, it's mentioned.
Yeah, that. See, and I there was something about it that made me think it's not a metaphor, that like it's literally a piece of hell. But
I was gonna say, it's like in this series where
Yeah.
hell can manifest, like say, yeah. I mean, it makes you wonder, right? Like what the consuls are trying to avoid going to hell, but like, what if they're do they use hell at all? Are they strictly like not hell related, like strictly this mortal coil?
Has
Like
the
what's
consult use sorcery? I'm trying to think. I'm trying to remember when they have used like sorcery or like stuff related to culture.
didn't the skin spy?
Oh, true.
We found
true.
out because it has a soul
Very
because it
true.
used sorcery, right? That's never come up again. I don't.
It's
That's
never
interesting.
come.
That's like a major thing.
It's gone.
Yeah.
But I guess the guy must have been using mandate sorcery, because otherwise they would have been like, "What the fuck are you doing?" So
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know, because most of the stuff we see from them is like technology, kind of.
Yeah,
So
totally. What the hell happened with Orang? Was that? Yeah, I think it was
Yeah.
Orang who flew in, had this epic entrance, and then didn't do fucking anything in the fight. Did he get
He got
nuked? I don't
nuked.
think so. But like, what was he just like hanging out? He was just like, all right, like good job, Strong. Let's go. Like, he's like at a t-ball game. He's like really just talking them up. What is going on? That in hindsight, I'm underwhelmed by. He didn't do a single thing. I really thought he was gonna just like wreck the floor with the mandate guy. I forget what his name is, but
Maybe
nothing
that
happened.
he was trying to do that, but he got nuked. Maybe.
Yeah, he got interrupted by nuclear Armageddon.
yeah.
Kellis should have just like teleported that nuke into Golgotroth. Like just like
True.
fly over Golgotroth and drop that nuke. Dude didn't play that. Like fuck
Good
the Great
point.
Ordeal. Just if you have nukes, just nuke them.
Maybe the arc is nuke proof or something.
Actually, that's a fair point. It totally could be nuke proof. If it
Even
travels
from
through
the
space,
inside?
I mean,
there's lots of radiation in space,
yeah.
so that probably
well,
is
if
nuke
it
proof.
fell from the sky and hit the Earth and is still somewhat intact, it must be pretty strong.
Yeah. No, it definitely has to be able to withstand a nuke. Now that we're talking about it, that shit's got to be basically indestructible on this planet.
We'll see, maybe.
Oh, crazy idea that I don't believe, but I'm just going to throw it out there because I like to throw shit at the wall and sometimes it sticks. What if Mimara somehow gives birth to the no god? I don't know how this would happen, but what if there is in some way through, it's like what I'm talking is like a weird anti-Jesus Christ thing, right? Like she like gives birth to the Antichrist. I don't know how that would work. You know, maybe if that's the death, because like the no god is the no god alive technically. You know, like what is the no god? That said, again, I don't believe it, but
Yeah.
that's something I'm going to throw into either, and
Yeah.
you
When
know,
you
let it
said
fall
that for a
flat probably.
second, I was about to say something, and then I was like, wait a second, we don't know that yet.
Oh God.
Yeah. Not
Nice.
directly connected to what you
So,
said, but kind of. Yeah.
so if
Careful, Steve. I don't know.
the be careful. Choose my words carefully. I better be quiet because I'm not sure. I don't want to give away too much because I just think if they're okay. So if she's if she's carrying twins, two, she's carrying two, and it's the end of the world potentially, or the second apocalypse. At least, so yeah.
One
What
baby
could
for each
that
apocalypse.
symbolize?
2 equals 0.
Okay.
Is it the
So
0 equals 2?
okay. Please let it not be this, but are you saying male and female and they'll start the world together? I hope that's not what you're saying.
I'm not
Or
saying
like
anything. I'm
a
asking a question.
Ragnarok thing?
uh,
Because that's how like the Christian reimagining of Ragnarok goes. Is the world ends, some of the gods survive, and then basically like Adam and Eve pop out
mm,
of trees.
Well, that's not. No, in Christianity, there's apocalypse, right? And then everyone gets reincarnated, and that's it. It's not cyclical, right?
So no, the
But
Norse
Norse.
myth
But
is
you
what I'm
said
talking
Christian, so I
about.
was
Of
like,
like when they, yeah,
okay.
no, when they like, my understanding is when they like reimagine the Norse myths, their version of it ended with Ashen Elm,
Oh, I didn't know that.
which was the man and
Okay.
woman coming out of the Ashen Elm trees and being the first new man and
Mm.
woman after
Okay.
Ragnarok, after all the previous people got
Mm.
wiped out. And obviously, the Ashen Elm is like Adam Eve
Mm.
sort of
I see.
situation there. But I may be mistaken. I definitely know that's an ending of Ragnarok
Mm.
or New Beginning, you could say. So that's an interesting idea. I really hope it's not that. One, because that would be a bummer, and two, gross. But you know, it's not
I
beyond
mean,
Baker.
it's already happened several times in this series. So,
Yeah.
yeah, several
well,
times.
the
Who?
close family relations, let's say.
Oh,
He
okay.
hasn't had a Jamie and Cersei yet, though. So I'll give him that. He hasn't
No,
crossed
wait.
that line.
It
Eh,
Compass and his mother kind of, or no, not his mother. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
kind of.
that's horrible. That's up there. Yeah.
I
who?
guess
That's
Oh,
Moangus and
definitely up
Conquest.
there.
Thurway.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they're not technically blood related, but
No.
mentally they are.
That's one of those things that's, yeah, it's gross, but it's not as gross as it could be,
I
you know?
guess.
Like it's the same thing with Kamian and Mimara. I hate it. It makes me want to shrivel in a
Yeah,
ball and die, but it is not as gross as if they were actually father and daughter.
I guess. I guess.
As far as like spoiling things goes, Varsha, even though you've read the last sentence or two of the last book,
Sentence.
even
No.
even with that, I'm not going to say whether or not some of your predictions have been close or not. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. But either way, there's still a lot of surprises to come.
Yeah.
I just think there's things that you just can't predict. Like you just so it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, I think the thing that I think I found out, like I don't know, that sentence could mean anything, honestly. I don't think that gave me any useful information. you know. Well,
That's the
maybe
point,
that
though.
combined with the title of the third series gives me some information. But anyway, I'll shut up so that I don't spoil things for Carl. But
There's a decent chance we both know the same thing because
okay,
the title of the third series, I found out actually after I found out the spoiler that
okay,
relates to the title of the third series. But beyond that, I don't know anything.
okay, okay. We'll discuss what we got spoiled for when we finish the series. Okay, so twice before I predicted or was wondering whether the no god would be what
Oh.
would be reborn into somebody. First I thought Sarborn, and then I think second I thought maybe Mimara's child, but like not the way you were saying. And Dan said that's a very interesting idea. Hold that thought. So Carl, I'm wondering if you're on to something there with Mimara and the no god.
I don't know. I mean, that would be interesting, especially with the judging eye and everything.
Mm-hmm.
My original theory for that, going back to the very first trilogy, I think the Warrior Prophet, when he had his vision, was maybe he comes back through Kellis. I don't know if it would be Kellis like alive or Kellis dead. Like I almost want to say because of the sarcophagus that Kellis would have to die for the no god to like inhabit
That
him.
kind of implies,
maybe.
right?
But that was my
Sarcophagus
theory,
is
like,
where you
way
keep
back.
dead people,
Right.
right?
Exactly. Right. Exactly. That's exactly.
Or
That's
you
the
bury them
implication, right?
alive with potato.
Yeah. Right. But I don't know.
But I think they call it
I also
they call
thought
it nucleus or sarcophagus, so I think they have used similar language. So maybe
Mm.
are we? I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, so I don't even know if I can ask this. But are we supposed to believe the consult actively has the sarcophagus?
I think it's
Yeah, I
implied
guess
that
that's
they
unclear at this point.
like when he was killed, like they scavenged it or something.
Retrieved it?
Something like that. I think it's implied
Right.
that because everything was destroyed, the humans and non-men didn't go and actually finish the whole consult off and make sure that they didn't have all the
Right.
other stuff. I think.
That's what I'm saying. Is like that's the implication, right? Like they think they can revive them, but it hasn't been explicitly said. But like it certainly is implied that
Maybe they have it
the
like a spare.
sarcophagus.
There's like more than one or something.
They have a spare. They have
I
a
don't know.
spare sarcophagus lying around. They're like, oh, this is the backup. All those kings say keep an heir and a spare. This is it
Or maybe
right
they
here
can
for you.
make one. It just takes a long time or something. We don't know really, right?
Right. We
Yeah.
don't know what it is, right? It's got the fucking core. Like, why is the core
Yeah, I think that's the only thing we know.
important
It's
in
got
it?
like 7 or 9 or core or something on it, right?
Which is like functionally it makes sense that protects it from magic, but like why is that? Like, is that the only reason? It seems like they made the sarcophagus.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of at this point the implication is it's techne. Like they created the sarcophagus and then maybe through what's unclear to me is if it's all techne or if it's like techne and magic combined. But I guess we'll see. Anyway, do we want to do quotes or is there any other final thoughts?
Want to get some predictions from the two of you for the next book. Just one prediction.
One prediction.
I have one prediction that I feel like is really safe that I've been saying for several books now that I feel confident about. I don't know if this is exciting though, but I do think Kellis is going to die. Like this just seems like that's where his story is going. I don't know how.
Do you think it's going to be the White Luck Warrior?
I thought I knew. That's what I thought, but then it wasn't. So I don't know. Maybe Sorwheel won't kill him. I don't know. That totally threw a wrench in all my theories. I was so confident that was how it was going, that we were just watching the slow moving bullet. But now I'm like, I don't know. I guess that's not how physics works in this series or metaphysics. So I don't know. But I do think he will still die. Just I have a number of reasons, but I think he will die. I don't know what he will do before he dies. He's definitely going to do things. Beyond that, I don't know who's going to live or who dies otherwise. Like a Kamian I could see living through everything. That kind of feels like his lot in life. Esmonet I think is going to die. I think I said this at the end of the last book. I think Esmonet's screwed. Nair, no chance. He's come back just to die again. I put him in the dead pool.
What about
I don't know.
I don't know. Serwa or
Proyas.
Kalmomas or Proyas.
Is Moingus still alive?
Moingus is still alive.
Well,
Do we know? Okay.
Sorwheel.
You know what? I bet here's one thing I'll throw out. I bet Moingus meets Nair. At this point, since Nair's alive, why not do that?
Oh yeah. And they're geographically somewhat close. Yeah.
Close-ish.
Closer than they've ever
Close-ish.
been, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. If they don't meet at this point, I mean, if you reintroduce Nair and you don't like that would just be a wasted opportunity. So I feel like Baker's
Like a
got to do
nice
that. But
reunion.
it could literally
Nair's
be
gonna hug him, give him a kiss. I miss you.
no. It's gonna be the worst thing ever. It's gonna be so unhappy and violent, and maybe Mohingus will kill Nair.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, that would be cool. But it's gonna be horrible, but awesome. So that's my big theory for the next book.
Oh,
Varsha?
can I do a ridiculous one? Moengus and Nair and Consult Serva are going to parent Moengus.
I go to what?
Parent together,
yeah.
Moengus.
They're gonna readopt
Maybe.
Mohingus.
Oh, predictions. I don't know. I guess I got wishful thinking again more than predictions. I want Mimara's twins to be okay. I know they won't, but I want them to be okay.
Yeah.
What else? I think you covered a lot of ground with yours. I think Esminet's going to survive from, like, based on all I've heard about the series. I think she's going to be okay.
I liked your optimism.
Well, she's cheating. She's not optimistic. She just reads information. Places.
I'm dunyaning the information.
For me, a lot of my theorizing is just that, like, supposedly the last book, the Unholy Consult, works as a last book, that, like, theoretically he could never come back and write anymore. And so in my mind, that means that there has to be a lot of conclusive things that happens, and that there needs to be some thematic conclusion. And to my mind, Esminet's story needs to, like, her story ends in her death. I mean, in a way, everyone's story ends in death, but, like, the only reason I feel like Akamian could survive is sort of, that's like, again, like that's his lot in life, is to just kind of be around and to witness everything, you know, like he's the historian, like he just unfortunately lives on. And Esminet, I feel like, but maybe I'm wrong about Esminet, because I guess to this point she's like somehow managed to, through ingenuity and a lot of luck, survive. So, you know, fate is a whore, and you know, we'll see.
Yeah.
The last book is basically a slapstick comedy. It's very lighthearted.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's very light. It's like a comedy. We'll fly through it.
Steve, I would have believed you if I didn't know anything about the series.
It is
Really?
no, and honestly, it's very. It's the darkest of the books, I think. Safe to say.
Yeah.
That wasn't a comment on what I think of the series. It was a comment on how serious Steve looked while saying that.
I think if I remember correctly,
but
it's in the first couple of chapters already pretty dark, if I remember correctly.
The first couple? So what we're reading for next week?
So. If that's what happens in the previous, I think that's what happens. You know what I'm talking about, Steve. I think that happens in the beginning. But
it can't all, like, everything can't happen at the very end, you know? Like, if you think about, like, the last book of the first trilogy, like, there were, like, considerable things happening, you know, throughout the novel. Like, it wasn't like the last two chapters had all of the reveals and everything stuffed into it. That just doesn't make sense pacing-wise. So, yeah, stuff has to start pretty quickly.
Yeah, I didn't think, for instance, that the attempt on Kellis's life would happen in the third book. I thought that was much later in the book thing.
That was crazy. That really, wow. My jaw was on the floor. I was like, holy shit, this is what, like, we're going to have a whole book without Kellis? I was blown away. That chapter, that's one of the best chapters in the whole series, I think. All 7 books that we've read, you know, all 6 that we've read of the 7. I was blown away by that chapter.
The Unholy Consult, that is the title of that one sorcerer who opened Golgotha or something.
the consult's like him plus his other accomplices, right?
It's like the Avengers. It's like their
Okay.
team
I
name.
don't remember if we know the
So
name
that
of all
group.
of them. Like we know of what's his name? Of the main guy. I don't know if we know the others.
We don't
Aurat.
even know if they're alive or
Yeah,
not, or who's
Hmm.
alive at this point. That was
they're pretty
unclear.
old. It's been a long time.
So at this point, okay, so do I have this right? Originally, it was the Inkoroi who came and wanted to avoid
Yes.
damnation, but there were two of them left at the end of all
Yes.
their
No.
wars with
Yes.
Or
non-men.
yes.
And
Sorry. Yeah.
and then the sorcerers, some non-men gave humans sorcery, and one of them decide or somehow stumbled upon Golgotha or were told that of the existence of it by the non-men, and then they wanted to avoid damnation, and that's how the consult came to be.
Kind of.
The
Okay.
Mangeka school.
Okay.
Yeah. Discovered them, basically gave in to temptation, and teamed up with the Inkoroi. The consult are like the human, now non-men seemingly too. I mean, I don't know where the barriers are. Like,
They're all inclusive.
are the non-men that fight on their side?
Everyone.
Yeah, that's what. Okay, so that's what I was wondering. That's how I kind of defined it. Is like they are just like,
Yeah.
it's a big umbrella. We'll welcome everyone. Like if you'll fight with us to murder people down to 144,000, you're welcome.
Seems like it.
Okay.
And I guess they found the no
Yeah, I
god
need to know.
and used him because I guess they didn't use him in the first wars. So,
That's right.
which
That's
is
so true.
interesting.
Yeah, it
Yes,
is interesting.
that's true. Yeah. So I think I would like. Okay, here's my prediction, I guess, or useless prediction. I think we'll find out more about how the Korai work, or like more about the
Oh, cool. Yeah.
because they have first with Mimara's judging eye thing, that how she's able. So did we ever see a recurrence of what happened in it was the end of the first book, right?
Yeah.
When she saw through the Korai and then used it to kill the guy from hell. And we haven't seen a repeat of the Korai doing anything more interesting. Again.
I don't think so.
So yeah, I think that might become important again. And I'd like to know more about how they work. I feel like that's tied to the non-man somehow. Non-man, no god. Somehow. Again, like with this recurring theme of like the emptiness or the nothingness, which is what the Korai is too, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah. That's it. compare that useless one to all of Carl's. I got nothing.
No, that's not useless at all. I think that is a good theory. I mean, that's not something I fully thought about, but I think you're right. I think it will come into play again, and I think we will find out more. What is unclear to me is how much will be unclear by the end of the last book, right? Like how many answers will we get, and how much will be left open to interpretation and theorizing and things like that.
We will get answers. But also some things which are like, there's a lot of things which are like, kind of, you can find the answers if you read a lot into a lot of things. And if you look at all the clues, right, it's like, okay, well, that makes sense, right? But it's not told to you explicitly something. But there are a lot of things which are told explicitly, pretty much.
Knowing the title of the third series, I'm really sad that it hasn't been written yet.
We'll talk once we're done.
Yeah.
There's lots to talk about.
Okay.
From like Bakker interviews and some other things. Well, yeah.
We might want to do an extra. I don't know. Maybe just one for the appendices. I don't know I don't remember how much there is, and one other for just going through, having a list of questions and going through forums and stuff like that to see what other people have written about them.
Yeah, sounds good.
And the atrocity tales.
Maybe
too.
the atrocity tales in the appendix would be one. I don't know. I don't know.
There's a lot to talk. I mean, I think the last episode will be a long one.
Yeah. We'll see, I guess.
Let's see. Maybe we can meet an hour early for that. We'll plan.
I think we did like a 2.5 hour thing, and there was still more.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talk 2 hours for no, for even when we think not much happened.
That's why let me word this carefully. That's why I'm surprised when people have discussions like for the whole book or for like the trilogy or for the whole series in like an hour. Like, how can you possibly wrap up? I mean, there's so much.
You just have to skip over stuff.
Yeah. It's tough. There's
Yeah.
so much to talk about.
I think those have to do mostly broad strokes, right? And we also spend a good amount of time, not a whole lot, but maybe 10, 15 minutes each episode talking predictions, which you don't have to necessarily do in the
Very
full
true.
book once.
True.
Very true.
Yeah. Cool. Quotes. I have one this
I
time.
also have one.
Go for it.
Oh no, but Steve has to start. That's
Oh.
what we do with quotes.
It's
Steve
the
swap.
Steve. Yeah, I got to live up to my name.
Mhm.
The on the beginning of chapter 17, to stand tallest beneath the sun is the yearning of the child and the old man alike. For verily age rises up and strips us down, but where the child dreams as he should, the old man is not, but a miser. The curse of growing old is to watch one's passion fall even more out of season, to dwell even more in the shadow of perversity.
Nice. I like that. My book is not loading. My quote is basically the last paragraph of the book. So Steve, could you read that too?
Go ahead, Dan, while I find it.
I just like Ellis's, I don't know, whatever he says in the last two discussions before, when he said not everyone can be saved, and this time he said, what did he say? Something must be eaten. It's just so ominous. Some very good quotes, in my opinion.
Yes.
There were a couple epigraphs that stood out to me. The first was chapter 14's. To be a man is to take the frame of man as firmament, to be immovable unto oneself. And to know man as a man is to be blind to this common frame, to be without knowing. Thus is knowing the corruption of being, and so to learn what it is to be a man is to cease to be a man. It just feels very getting to a lot of kind of the Dunyan argument and philosophizing of it all. And then chapter 15 is no bravery is possible in hell, and in heaven none is needed. Only heroes wholly belong to this world. Bleak and an interesting point of view that I found. Yeah, I don't know that I necessarily agree with it, but it's an interesting idea.
Mm-hmm. I found my quote. Oh yeah. And he hung upon his terror as a smile breaking, understanding at last that fatherhood, more than anything else, was mummery, the will to be a father needed, not the father you happened to be.
Damn you, Baker.
Damn you, Baker.
I mean, just because they sound nice doesn't mean they're true.
Yeah,
it's true.
Very
Yeah.
thought-provoking, though. There's so many great quotes.
So I don't know about the bit about the mummery. That part I don't necessarily agree with, but the will to be the father needed. I feel like why I liked that was it's not that you can just coast parenthood by just being the person you are. You may have to change yourself to be what your child needs you to be, not what you think a parent should be, sort of, I guess. Maybe a combination of the two. But
I
like
thought
that.
I interpreted like the father figure is something, a role you need to interpret. It's not, even if it's not you, you need to pretend that's you for your child. And then you have your own secret, problems or whatever, but you're not burdening your child with them. You're being a parent to your child, not a human, I guess.
That makes sense. Yeah.
In a sense.
That makes sense. I guess the mummery bit
That's how I.
falls more with what you said. But I like the emphasis on needed. And if I ignore the mummery bit, I like the rest of it.
One last epigraph. Gotta give it to my man Agensis again with chapter 16. It is no accident, they say, that men pray to the gods and the dead both. Far better silence than truth.
Yeah.
Agensis is always, he's spitting fire.
What some would say a smart cookie.
Yes.
So this series has also seen the return of Benjuka quite a bit, no?
In quotes, right? Yeah.
Like
I
yeah,
I fucking hate those quotes. I cannot understand a single one of them. They make no fucking sense. It to me is
Yeah.
Baker at his most up his own
I mean,
ass.
the game as it described could not exist. It's like the idea of a game,
No.
I guess. If a game could exist that was like that, then it would mimic relations
Mm,
in society in this universe, I guess. But I can't imagine what the game would be.
yeah.
The way, like, I'm sorry, it's terrible game design when like you read those rules and you're like, I don't know what this is saying. This isn't saying anything. It's paradox. What? This is a horrible game. Who's playing this game?
Yeah. It-
Anyway, I'm done ranting about that.
oh man, I forgot what I was going to say.
I'm sorry. I'm
No,
sorry,
that's
Scott Baker, if you ever listen to this. I love your writing. I hate the game. Hate the player, not the game. Wait, hate the game, not the. What's the
Hate
saying?
the game, not the
Whatever.
player,
You
hate
right?
hate me.
Yeah.
hate the game, not the
Yeah.
player. Yes.
There you go. I hate the game, not the player. Is what I'm saying.
Or the inventor. um. Yeah, I was gonna say on the subject of well, I don't know. There's not a good segue to it, so I'll just ask the refrain for the survivor's POV in that first chapter. The cuts and cuts and cuts. What did you guys think of that?
Because he's like his brain and his soul got cut into many pieces, right? As he got broken, I guess, and that's mimicked by the cuts he got on his body from the fighting, right? So it's like, oh, my
Mm,
body got cut, but also my mental got cut into broke
mm,
into a bunch of different pieces, like he described, right?
mm.
Like
Death by a
portions. What does
thousand
he call
cuts.
them? He calls them something, right? Fractions, yeah.
Fractions. Yeah. And on the subject of fractions, Esmenet, when in her POV, did we? Okay, again, sorry, I did this entire section on audiobook, so some of it I might be confusing some parts, but did she have a portion in her POV where she referred to herself as this fraction did this while this other fraction did that? Like, is she Dunyan thinking there?
Remember?
I'm pretty sure it wasn't a careless
Mm.
POV, and the word fraction was used.
I don't know.
But anyway, I thought that was interesting. But yeah, that's it. No more quotes from me. I just had that one because, again, audiobook. You guys picked some really nice ones that I probably would have highlighted if I had read the book. But
I do find with the audiobook, because I listened to the audiobook a lot while I was riding my bike. And I noticed when I go back and read some of the sections, it's the italics. It really helps like separate certain passages in the book, certain paragraphs, because there's certain sections in the book that are italicized for a reason. So when you're listening to it, you don't really get the full
Oh.
effect of when, like, you know, when to kind of switch gears and know what you're reading. So in that sense,
The narrator
it's
doesn't
kind of funky.
italicize his
Yeah.
speech.
I know he should shift eye that and like
He should
you know
start
tell
speaking
us.
like sarcastic
not
or
not
something.
control
enough,
it.
I don't think.
Yeah,
Like-
control A, right? Yeah,
I've
or shift.
I've read narrators who do a really good job with emphasis when there are italics and bold and whatnot. I feel like this one didn't. It didn't work for me. Like, I missed a lot with the narration for sure, and I think that in the hands of some other narrators I like, it might have come out better. But I don't dislike the narrator. I just miss a lot with them. And also, I think some parts feel more boring than they should be because of the narration. But I just did not have the time to read with my eyes this week, so I had to do
Read with
audiobook.
your ears.
But yeah, I'm gonna switch back.
Fair.
Yes. Anyway, yeah. So anything else before we wrap it up?
Yeah, it's funny we started off saying not a whole lot happened, and then here we are 2 hours later.
2 hours later. 2 hours later. We have to do it with the meme voice. Anyway, we'll
2
see.
hours later.
All right. So we have to do outros. Sorry. Dan,
Yeah.
go first,
I'm
please.
Dan, TNFire17 on Page Chewing Forum, and everyone should join. And that's it.
Carl D. Albert. That's me. That's me on page chewing. That's me everywhere. That's me in your dreams.
That's also the head on the pole.
Yes, I am the head on the pole.
Steve?
I am also ahead on the poll, and you can find me on pagechewing.com. Come and visit and find us on Speculative Speculations. All the links are in the description.
The head on the pole was the friends we made along the way.
Indeed.
And you can find me on the Page Chewing forum all the time, and on my YouTube channel, Reading by the Rainy Mountain, on Speculative Speculations. I have been forgetting to link Carl's book in the description in the YouTube videos, but I'll go update those. Go check that out too. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week with the first six chapters of The Unholy Consult. Thank you. Bye.